Story 1. I had a few roommates when I was living in the dorms my freshman year in college. They were good people all in all, and we had some good times, but as with just about every college experience for most of us, there was one guy who liked to drink a lot. One night, I came home at like 3 in the morning to find our drunk roommate just standing over one of our other roommates' beds, staring at him awkwardly in this odd, Walking Dead-looking stupor. I could tell he was plastered because he was kinda rocking around in silence in the dark. Honestly, it was a bit creepy, so I called out to him in a whisper, "Mike." He turned his head towards me relatively quickly, head bobbing all around, and slowly raised his finger in front of his mouth, and quietly shid me like fucking Elmer Fudd hunting rabbits. He held his finger there for another few seconds, and nearly incoherently muttered, "Fuck this guy." If you could permit me to quickly paint a picture of what Mike looked like, and what Rob looked like, you'll understand why this was a really huge problem. They were as polar opposite as you could imagine, in just about every capacity. Mike was a surfer from Los Angeles, shorter, skinnier kid, with long hair and a stoner attitude. Rob, on the other hand, grew up on a farm and was substantially larger and substantially more fit than Mike, and he never fucked around. Dude was serious, always. Now Mike must have already had it out without me noticing because he was primed and ready to fire without me even realizing what was going on. All I heard was the sound of water hitting cloth, and that's when I saw it. He had started to pee on Rob, who up until that moment was fast asleep. Rob, waking up to what he thought was just warm water, quickly realized what was happening and proceeded to jump out of bed and grabbed Mike, who was still peeing on him up until this point, and threw him across the room, off the far wall. He looked like a fucking rag doll bouncing off the wall, hitting the desk below, and then onto the ground. Mike didn't say a word. He stood up, quietly tucked himself in, and proceeded to walk right past Rob and climb back into his bed. Rob looked at me, looked at our other roommate who was now awake behind me, and looked back at Mike. All of us had this dumbfounded look on our face except Mike, who was, of course, within seconds, already starting to quietly snore. I honestly will never forget the sight of Rob standing there in the middle of the room, with urine dripping down his face, off his shoulders and down his arms, with this absolute befuddled look on his face, as he tried to process what the fuck just happened. I think it angered him more to hear Mike snoring because he angrily turned to his bed and tried to wake him up by shaking him, violently at first, and then hitting him in his back, arms and head. Nothing. Mike was out cold. Story 2. Roommate L landed a job out of town for the summer and found Jay to take over her lease for 3 months. Jay had 2 jobs, seemed responsible, and for the first month or so we all liked her. She was nice, social, did weird things like use toilet paper bizarrely quickly, but otherwise she seemed fine. Roommate R shares the basement with Jay, and R threw a small birthday party for a friend one night. Jay proceeded to invite the entire college basketball and football teams to our small house. Approximately 50 strangers showed up inebriated and screaming all over the neighborhood. The rental manager was called and the uninvited football giants were kicked out. Jay never apologized, and after that we avoided her as much as possible, just waiting for her to move out. About 2 weeks ago, rent was due, and Jay didn't pay. Rent is approximately 10% of her monthly income. After rent was late a few days, she offered the excuse that someone had stolen her debit card and cleared out her account, and that she was working with the police and her bank for a refund. Around the same time, R received a Snapchat of Jay wearing one of R's shirts. She had taken it out of R's room. I advised R to check her room for more missing things. She quickly realized that $200 was missing from the opaque black jar she kept tips in. It was hidden in an inconspicuous place. Someone would have had to really search for it. We immediately suspected Jay and set up R's camera to record video while R was at work. I work from home and was there when Jay came home and stole $20 from a jar R had set up in the room. Unfortunately, the camera overheated and didn't catch Jay in the act. Jay was again confronted about her late rent and missed repeated scheduled meetings with rental managers because her mother was in the hospital. Jay told me her mom had tried to kill herself. She told rental managers she had breast cancer. She told a friend her mother wasn't in the hospital at all. She also told friends that money had been stolen from her room and that she had set up a camera to catch the thief in the act. R hid the tip jar in a dirty laundry basket in her closet until she could get to the bank. When she took it out, $300 million dollars were missing. We called the police, and while they couldn't do much, they advised us to confront Jay and get her to confess. Jay was evicted for late rent and given a 3-day notice to exit the premises. She agreed to meet with R and me to discuss the stolen money, but didn't arrive when she'd said she would, as we expected. She snuck into the house later that day. I happened to hear her and cornered her. Calling the rental managers and R, we confronted Jay, and she confessed to stealing over $650 from R and agreed to pay the amount back the next day. Next day she texts R and says she can only pay her $100. R is pressing charges and Jay has been trespassed from our property. It's been a wild few weeks. The worst part of the whole ordeal was how Jay acted. Lie after lie after lie, more unbelievable than the next. She showed absolutely no remorse and kept talking about the situation as if it had been caused by someone else, i.e., "I'm sorry this happened to you." Talking to her, I got the sinking feeling that she didn't have a conscience and that she felt she had a right to the money. It didn't feel like I was talking to an actual person. I honestly feel bad for the girl. She has effectively ruined her life and needs serious help. Too long. Didn't read my compulsive liar roommate stole hundreds of dollars from my other roommate and made our lives a living hell. Edit. At a party this weekend, Jay bragged to several people about stealing the money. Previous roommates have come forward saying Jay stole from them and used the same excuses of her debit card being stolen and her mom being in the hospital. Jay told some of her friends that one of her roommates had stolen $400 from her room and that she had set up a camera to catch them, and her former coworker at a car dealership says she stole a car. Story 3. He is a friend of mine, and he has sleeping disorders. He used to speak while sleeping, and if prompted, he would answer for most questions correctly until he realizes that he is speaking in real. So by this way, we could get truth from him easily if one could sacrifice a night's sleep. And this is the reason he never indulges in any silly or mischievous activities, thinking his roommates would find out easily. One night after we saw Conjuring movie in room with surround sound system, we got frightened and slept on the floor with each other except that guy. The time was around 3 and I was sleeping nicely because of the thought that my friends are sleeping nearby me. Suddenly I heard someone laughing. My spine got chilled and I had no idea to open my eyes ever. But slowly I could sense a shadow kind of thing over my face from someone blocking the light from night lamp, and the laughing started to get heavy. With high heartbeats, I opened my eyes to see a gigantic figure standing over my bed and laughing at me like a ghost. That's it. I screamed like anything along with my friends, who were awakened by my scream and got frightened along with me. Our screams woke him up and he realized he's walking in his sleep and turned towards his bed and walked slowly. The rest of the night was longest for all of us except him. Story 4. My junior year of college, I was living with 2 of my good friends. My parents owned the house we lived in and gave us very cheap rent. All they asked in the contract was that we not have any pets over 30 pounds and didn't destroy the house. The first 3 months went great. My roommates smoked a lot of weed, but they always did it outside of the house, so I didn't mind. In November, I went to Bali, Indonesia with 6 friends for a week. When I came back, my roommate had adopted a giant 50-pound pit bull. I was told she had literally gotten the dog the day after I had left. It had been living in the house for a week. I was mad for me and my parents. I told her before we moved in together that I didn't like living with big dogs, that I'd had bad experiences. I couldn't believe she got one behind my back. Plus, she'd signed a contract with my parents saying she wouldn't get a dog over 30 pounds while she lived there. I told her how angry I was, how she betrayed me by doing this while I was out of the country, how she couldn't keep the dog because she'd signed a legally binding contract. She replied saying it was an accident. She went to a pound just to look at the dogs and she came out with one. Apparently it was a kill shelter. She said, "What did you expect me to do, let him die?" I told her she could save the dog, find a new home for it, but it couldn't stay at our house. When she didn't get rid of it for a week, I told her it needed to be gone by tomorrow. That's when all hell broke loose. First, she started smoking a ton of weed in the house every day. My house was a hot box all the time. I couldn't study in my house without getting a high sometimes. She spent so much on weed she didn't have enough for rent for multiple months and had to borrow from our other roommate, her best friend. Next, she started having her drug dealers sleep over in our house. I would wake up to go to class, and her 2 drug dealers were sleeping on a blow-up mattress in our living room each morning. I was terrified of them. Not only that, their drug dealers would have people stop by our house to pick up weed. It was terrifying. I was living in a trap house. I was scared of police coming and getting implicated in a drug bust. She also publicly posted about how horrible I was on social media. I would wake up to a post of a meme with a caption complaining about something I did. All her friends would leave comments about how horrible I was also. She started throwing a lot of mini parties in our house on school nights. I was an engineering major, so I just had to stay out of the house since I needed to study a lot. My parents visited me after that. They were driving through our town, and I had them sit in my living room a while before we went to dinner. Afterwards, my roommate called my parents, threatening to sue them. She said they didn't give 24 hours notice as landlords that they were coming to the house. She said she could, and she would sue them because of it. They were very surprised. They just said we were only visiting our daughter. My roommate also started sending strange handwritten notes to my parents. All of them complained about me. One note detailed how I left a crock pot to soak on the stove and it attracted spiders. Another letter she sent my parents complained about how I left a drip on the stove. These notes complained mostly about how horrible she thought I was as a roommate. At the bottom of every note, she'd sign her name and her phone number saying, "Call me if you have any questions." She literally wrote letters to my parents about her roommate problems. My parents were confused and called her, wanting to explain that they, as landlords, had no jurisdiction over her roommate discrepancies. When they called her, she started screaming at them, literally screaming. She got so upset that she never got a full sentence out and hung up the phone on them. She eventually got so crazy that my parents just let her out of the lease. They didn't want to be screamed at. My parents are very non-confrontational people. Story 5. I am going anonymous because my roommate finds this embarrassing. He doesn't want people to know about this. This happened 2 months back with my previous roommate. We used to share the same room. Let's call him K. This happened at around 1:00 a.m. in the morning. I heard a shrill scream of a woman. I was scared shit and woke up. It had come from the direction where K was sleeping. It felt like a lady was in the room itself. I looked around, there was nothing. K was fast asleep. There was nothing outside the window. I was scared and could not sleep all night, with a fear that something else was going to happen again. Woke up in the morning to find that K had scratched his right hand using his left-hand fingernails. He had dug his nails deep, and he had no idea how he did it. He did not feel any pain till morning. He told me that he watched a dream where a lady was not letting of her, and she held him tightly. He had no idea who she was. He had no explanation for what happened. He had to see a doc for the wound, because it was severe. For a few days after that, I spent few more sleepless nights, expecting something else to happen, but nothing happened and we never were able to solve the mystery. Story 6. Some nights, she talks to people that I can't see, between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning. We shared a room in one of the university's hostel at the westernmost end of Singapore. The hostel faced a jungle, dense uninhabited areas that the military occasionally uses for live firing exercises. Further up the road, Jalan Bahar, is a large Chinese cemetery. It was a very small and simple room. Just one door, one window, 2 beds, side by side, 2 cupboards, and 2 desks. The first night it happened, I thought she was on the phone with someone. She was asking questions, pausing, laughing. The conversation actually woke me up. "Hey, you gotta be kidding me, right? It's 3 a.m. She had her back to me and flat out ignored me. I sat up and stared at her, and that was when I noticed the blinking light on the table. She had left her phone to charge. I peered over her shoulders and saw that she seems to be having a conversation with someone lying beside her. This happened a couple of times, and she always don't remember them when I ask her the next day. The incident that freaked the F out of me was the night she suddenly jolted upright. What in the world? My bed actually shook, and my heart almost came out my mouth. Seriously? I turned around and saw her sitting up, having a conversation with someone who's sitting on one of our chairs. I have no idea why the chair was facing her bed. Goodness. Sleep talking? Sleep walking? I don't know. I asked if she had a history of doing that, but nopes. Back home, she shares room with her sister, and her sis has never complained about her having conversations with people. One last freaky story about my roommate. So this one night, I heard her get out of the bed, which was pretty normal. We get out the bed to go to the toilet outside, or to get water, but she didn't leave the room. I turned around to peep at her, and she was standing at the window. Holy mother of G! I was so afraid she was gonna jump. But what does she do? She talks to someone right outside our window. The hell? Blah blah blah. And then she comes back to bed. Story 7. When I was in college in 2009, I was sharing flat with 3 more students who were my classmates. It was 2 rooms flat, 1 big hall and 1 bedroom. We had huge gang in a college, and we were the only non-local students, so our flat was the ada for whole gang. The gang used to spend whole day on our flat. So let's go to story. Those were rainy days. An incident happened in month of July. It was one of our roommate's birthday, so we decided to prank him by not wishing him for his birthday. We, all roomies and gang, went for outing, but no one wished him on his special day. He was very upset and we were able to feel his sadness. Whole day was spent on outing, and we came back to our flat at around 9:30 p.m. The gang went their home, not actually, and we roomies set our beds and watching some horror movie lying on bed. The birthday boy was also watching movie with us, but he was so upset that he preferred leave movie in half and go to bed. The birthday boy was sleeping alone in bedroom with his loneliness, and it was around 11:30 p.m. We confirmed that he is in deep sleep. We immediately called our gang who were waiting outside with cake. Gang came in. Lights switched off. Birthday boy still in deep sleep. One naughty fellow brought a scary mask with him. He put on the mask and sat in front of him. The whole gang shouted at the same time, "Happy birthday, Baba, bro." And he opened his eyes and saw a masked ghost staring at him. He was so scared, he actually peed in his pants. He was so damn scared that he was not able to speak for some time and was behaving weird. Looking at his condition now, it was our turn to wet our pants, but somehow we succeed to calm him and brought him to normal. This was nightmare for him and for us as well. None of us have forgotten this incident, and I'm sure none of us will ever forget it. Till date, we have never forgot to wish him on his birthday. Story 8, it was a perfect setup in the room to scare the shit out of someone if you wished to. Lights off, except a study table light, just enough to let you acknowledge a presence in the room. My roommate was fast asleep. I double-checked, as he had a habit of jumping me when I watched such movies. Cutting to the chase, there's this scene where the actress wakes up in her bedroom to discover someone roaming in the balcony. At that precise movement, I see a figure pass by the study light from the corner of my eye in the same direction. I immediately hit pause and move my arm around to check if my roommate is the one roaming around. But no, he is still there sleeping. Might be an overthought. Still, a part of me hangs on to the possibility of a ghost in the room. Hit play. The ghost in the balcony moves back and forth once more, and with a really wicked background sound comes back. But inside the room this time. This is when the shit gets real. The figure again passes back against the study light, and I check on my roommate with my arm to find him asleep again. The small part that believed now takes over and I stay still, waiting for him, or it, to pass back. Nothing happens. Once again, roommate still asleep. I carefully lay back, and as I am about to resume the movie, I feel a hand on my shoulder with a nasal voice calling my name. Druval? I swear the adrenaline rush in my body at that moment could bring a dead man back to life. Then I hear again, story 9, this was my first night with my new roomie. Lights were out as he went to sleep early. There wasn't much to do as the classes were yet to begin. I opened up my laptop and began searching for the movies I could watch. Long time, no horror movies, I thought. And voila! My eyes stopped on Drag Me to Hell, did my usual analysis on IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, and found that this could be a good watch. I started the movie and it was going well. Some little scary scenes here and there, and in between I was keeping an eye on my roomie sleeping next to me to make sure the light wasn't disturbing. But all was well since his back was facing me. Then out of nowhere came the scene which according to me was the scariest of the movie, especially because of its timing. What happened next is the scariest moment of my life. I hadn't realized when my roomie had changed his posture and was facing me now. So just when this scene came, it prompted me to look away from the screen towards him. What scared the shit out of me was that he was sleeping with his eyes open, only the white part visible, and his tongue out of his mouth. I just removed the earphones and ran out of my room. With time, I realized this is how he always slept.